The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and polished ambition, yet Elara Whitmore felt as though the walls were closing around her. Laughter drifted through the crowded hall, but every smiling face seemed to hide an expectation she could no longer bear. Her mother moved among the guests with practiced grace, accepting compliments while steering conversations toward one subject alone: Elara's future. Vivian Whitmore had spent years climbing society's ladder. Tonight she intended to secure the final step. "Elara, stand beside Lord Blackthorn," Vivian said softly. Elara forced herself to comply. The man waiting near the center of the ballroom was handsome in the way expensive statues were beautiful, polished, cold, and lifeless. Lord Cedric Blackthorn wore a confident smile that never reached his eyes. "You look lovely tonight," he said, taking her hand without asking permission. His grip tightened slightly. Elara resisted the urge to pull away. "Thank you, my lord." Cedric leaned closer. "You will grow accustomed to being at my side." The certainty in his tone chilled her. Before she could reply, Vivian raised a crystal glass. Conversations faded. "My friends," Vivian announced, "it gives me great pleasure to share wonderful news. My daughter, Elara, has accepted a marriage agreement with Lord Cedric Blackthorn." Applause erupted. Elara froze. Then she saw Cedric smiling. She saw her mother smiling. And she understood. The decision had been made without her. Guests approached with congratulations. Women praised her fortune. Men praised Cedric's success. Nobody noticed that she could barely breathe. When the crowd shifted elsewhere, Elara confronted her mother beside a marble column. "You promised we would discuss this first." Vivian's expression hardened. "Discussion would have changed nothing. You announced my engagement. I secured your future. My future belongs to me." Vivian sighed. "Your future belongs to reality. Lord Blackthorn offers wealth, protection, influence, and stability. Love fades. Security endures. I do not love him. You do not need to." The words struck harder than a slap. Elara stared at the woman who had raised her and suddenly felt farther from her than ever before. "You are asking me to spend my life with a man who treats people like possessions. I am asking you to stop behaving like a child." Something inside Elara snapped. Without another word, she turned and walked away. She ignored her mother calling after her. Ignored the curious stares. Ignored everything. Minutes later she slipped through a side entrance and fled into the night. Cool air rushed against her face. The city beyond the estate stretched beneath a silver moon. Elara walked quickly at first, then faster, as though distance alone could untangle the knot tightening inside her chest. She crossed quiet streets until the elegant neighborhoods disappeared behind her. The roads narrowed. Stone buildings grew older. Eventually she reached the outskirts of town. An abandoned chapel stood atop a low hill, its weathered walls glowing beneath moonlight. Drawn by exhaustion more than purpose, Elara climbed the slope. Near the crumbling entrance sat a man beside a small lantern. His clothes were worn. His boots were patched. Yet he sat with a calm dignity that felt strangely out of place. He looked up as she approached. "You seem lost." His voice was warm and steady. Elara almost laughed. Lost would be an improvement. The stranger studied her face without judgment. For reasons she could not explain, she sat beside him. They spoke. At first only a few words, then many. Elara told him about the engagement, the announcement, and the future she never wanted. Instead of pity, she found understanding. "People often confuse power with wisdom," the stranger said, "and freedom with foolishness." She glanced at him. "You speak like a scholar." A faint smile touched his lips. "Appearances are unreliable." Something about him intrigued her. He introduced himself as Rowan Vale. A beggar, he admitted without embarrassment. Yet nothing about him matched the image the word created. His speech was refined. His observations were thoughtful. His eyes carried the confidence of someone who had endured hardship without surrendering to it. For the first time all evening, Elara felt heard. An idea began forming. Wild, dangerous, possibly absurd. "If I marry before the contract is finalized," she said slowly, "my mother cannot force the engagement." Rowan raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like a desperate plan." "It is." A nervous laugh escaped her. Then she looked directly at him. "Marry me." The words hung between them. Rowan blinked. For several seconds neither spoke. Finally he asked, "Are you serious?" "Yes." "You barely know me." "I know enough." He studied her face carefully. At last he nodded. "Then yes." The answer shocked her almost as much as her own proposal. Before dawn they found an elderly priest willing to perform a simple ceremony. There were no musicians, no lavish decorations, no cheering guests, only vows spoken beneath candlelight. Yet every word felt more honest than anything Elara had heard in the ballroom. When the ceremony ended, she became Elara Vale. The reaction was immediate. By afternoon the city buzzed with scandal. Vivian was furious. Society was horrified. Cedric Blackthorn was enraged. But the marriage was legal. Nothing could undo it. That evening Elara followed Rowan to the modest room he rented near the chapel. The space was small but clean. A single lantern illuminated the worn furnishings. As Rowan removed his coat, something slipped from an inner pocket. A heavy ring struck the table. Instinctively Elara picked it up. The metal gleamed in the lantern light. Engraved upon its face was an intricate crest unmistakably belonging to nobility. For one brief instant, surprise flashed across Rowan's features. Then he stepped forward and gently took the ring from her hand. The calmness never left his voice, yet something guarded settled behind his eyes. Without explanation, he slipped the signet ring back into his pocket, and Elara suddenly realized the mysterious man she had married might be hiding far more than poverty alone, and secrets far older than she imagined. Morning arrived with none of the comforts Elara had known in her former life. Thin sunlight crept through cracked shutters, revealing a room scarcely large enough for two people. The mattress was narrow, the blankets worn, and the air carried the scent of old wood and chimney smoke. Yet as she opened her eyes, her attention drifted not to the hardships surrounding her but to Rowan, who sat quietly beside the window reading a weathered book. For a moment she forgot he was supposed to be a beggar. Then reality returned. The following weeks tested her resolve. The money she had once spent without thought suddenly became precious. Meals were simple. Some evenings consisted of little more than bread and broth. Elara learned how to mend clothing, bargain at market stalls, and stretch every coin until it nearly lost its shape. The transition was humiliating at times. People who once praised her elegance now crossed the street to avoid her. Former friends pretended not to recognize her. Whispers followed wherever she went. The daughter of Vivian Whitmore had married a beggar. Society found endless amusement in her fall. Yet Rowan never complained. He worked whenever work could be found, carrying supplies, repairing fences, helping merchants unload wagons, and performing countless tasks that left his hands rough and his shoulders weary. Every evening he returned with the same calm expression. Every evening he asked about her day as though her thoughts genuinely mattered. The respect surprised her. Lord Cedric had spoken of ownership. Rowan spoke of partnership. One afternoon, while delivering packages for a shopkeeper, Rowan exchanged greetings with a traveling merchant from the southern coast. To Elara's astonishment, the conversation flowed in flawless southern tongue. The merchant laughed warmly before continuing on his way. Elara stared. "You speak southern?" "A little." "That wasn't a little." Rowan merely smiled. A few days later she discovered him reading a legal document left behind by a clerk. Not only could he understand it, he explained several complicated passages better than the clerk himself. "You know law. Enough to avoid trouble. You sound like someone who studied it." Perhaps I listened carefully. His answers never quite answered anything. The mysteries multiplied. One rainy afternoon a farmer invited them to shelter inside his barn. A horse became agitated during a storm and broke free from its stall. Before anyone could react, Rowan stepped forward. His movements were confident and effortless. Within moments the frightened animal stood calm beneath his hand. The farmer stared in admiration. "Elara," the man said, "your husband rides like nobility." Rowan laughed softly and changed the subject. But Elara noticed. She noticed everything. The perfect posture. The refined manners. The way he instinctively stood when older women entered a room. The way he spoke to laborers and merchants with equal respect. Nothing fit. One evening she finally confronted him. "You don't belong in this life." The words escaped before she could stop them. Rowan looked up from repairing a torn sleeve. "Why would you say that?" "Because every day I discover something impossible about you." His expression softened. "And does that frighten you?" She considered the question. Surprisingly, it did not. No. A silence settled between them. Comfortable. Gentle. Different from any silence she had ever shared with another person. As weeks passed, the distance between them gradually disappeared. Elara found herself smiling more often. She laughed at Rowan's dry humor. He listened when she spoke about her fears. She listened when he spoke about hope. Without realizing it, affection rooted itself quietly inside her heart. One evening they walked through the village square as lanterns glowed against the gathering dusk. Children ran between market stalls. Musicians played soft melodies nearby. Rowan purchased a single sweet pastry and split it evenly between them. It was a small gesture. Yet Elara treasured it more than any expensive gift she had received in high society. For the first time since leaving home, she felt genuinely happy. But happiness rarely goes unnoticed. Lord Cedric Blackthorn had not forgotten her. Rumors began spreading. Employers who once welcomed Rowan suddenly refused his services. Merchants became reluctant to help them. Several strangers appeared repeatedly near their home. They watched, never speaking, never approaching, simply watching. The feeling unsettled Elara. When she mentioned it, Rowan's gaze sharpened briefly before he masked his concern. "Stay close to me," he said. The seriousness in his voice lingered long after the conversation ended. Meanwhile, other oddities emerged. Villagers frequently received unexpected assistance. A widow found money to repair her roof. A sick child received medicine nobody could afford. An elderly laborer discovered his debts mysteriously paid. Again and again, Rowan seemed connected to these acts of kindness. Yet he never accepted credit. "How are you doing this?" Elara asked one night. "Doing what?" "Helping everyone." He stared into the fire. "Sometimes people deserve help." "That isn't an answer." "No," he admitted quietly, "it isn't." Her curiosity deepened. A few days later, while cleaning their room, she discovered several folded letters hidden beneath loose floorboards. She hesitated before opening one. The handwriting was elegant. The contents were brief. But a single phrase captured her attention immediately. "Your Grace." Her pulse quickened. She opened another. The same title appeared. And another. Again. "Your Grace. Your Grace. Your Grace." The letters clearly referred to Rowan. Confusion swirled through her mind. Before she could confront him, shouting erupted outside. She hurried into the street. Villagers had gathered around the marketplace. Riders on powerful horses thundered toward the square. Their polished armor gleamed beneath the afternoon sun. The crowd parted instantly. Elara's breath caught. The armed men stopped directly before Rowan. The leader dismounted. For one suspended moment, nobody moved. Then the soldier dropped to one knee. Another followed. Then another. Within seconds, every rider knelt before the man the world believed to be a beggar. The marketplace fell silent. The leader lowered his head and spoke words that shattered everything Elara thought she knew. "Your Grace," he said clearly, "Ashbourne awaits the return of its rightful duke." Around them, villagers gasped in disbelief, but Elara heard only the pounding of her own heart as Rowan closed his eyes briefly, as though a destiny he had delayed for years had finally arrived to claim him at last today. The marketplace remained frozen long after the riders knelt. Villagers stared openly. Merchants abandoned their stalls. Even the wind seemed to hesitate. Elara stood motionless while the title echoed through her mind. The word refused to fit the man she knew. Rowan did not look triumphant. Instead, he looked tired, as though a burden he had carried for years had finally become impossible to hide. Slowly he asked the riders to rise. Then he turned toward Elara. Their eyes met across the silent square. She saw regret there before he spoke a single word. Her heart sank instantly. That evening they sat alone inside their small room. The familiar walls suddenly felt unfamiliar. The man across from her appeared the same, yet everything had changed. Rowan rested his hands on the table and finally spoke. His true name, he revealed, was Rowan Ashbourne. He was the rightful Duke of Ashbourne, heir to one of the largest duchies in the kingdom. Years earlier, his father had ruled the region with fairness and strength. Powerful enemies had resented that influence. They formed secret alliances, bought loyalty with gold, and waited patiently for the perfect opportunity to strike. Rowan's voice remained steady, but pain shadowed every sentence. One winter night the conspiracy moved. Trusted advisors betrayed his father from within the household. Guards accepted bribes. Doors were left unguarded. Assassins entered the ducal residence under cover of darkness. Rowan's father was murdered before help could arrive. Rowan himself had been marked for death. He survived only because Lady Seraphine Ashbourne, his father's sister, discovered the plot moments before the killers reached him. She smuggled him from the estate through hidden passages and vanished before the conspirators realized their prey had escaped. Elara listened without interruption. Images formed vividly in her mind: a frightened boy fleeing through darkness, a noble house drenched in betrayal, a family shattered by greed. Rowan explained how Seraphine had hidden him among ordinary people. The fewer who knew the truth, the safer he remained. Over the years he learned to survive without privilege. He begged, worked, listened, and watched. While his enemies searched castles and noble estates, he walked unnoticed through villages and cities. Every rumor, every whispered conversation, every suspicious transaction became another piece of the puzzle he was assembling. When Rowan finished, silence settled heavily between them. Elara stared at the table. Part of her sympathized with the suffering he described. Another part felt deeply wounded. The honesty she had cherished suddenly seemed incomplete. "You lied to me," she said quietly. Rowan flinched. "I hid the truth." The distinction offered little comfort. "I married a man I thought I understood." Her voice trembled despite her efforts to control it. "How can I know what was real?" Rowan's expression tightened. Everything between us was real. Yet uncertainty lingered painfully between them. The following days were strained. Rowan spent hours meeting loyal supporters who had emerged from hiding. Elara remained distant. She wanted to trust him, yet trust once fractured could not be repaired by explanation alone. Still, memories complicated her anger. She remembered cold evenings when he shared his last coin. She remembered kindness offered without expectation. Those moments had existed before she knew his title. They could not be dismissed as deception. Gradually she began to understand that Rowan's secret had not been born from vanity. It had been born from survival. Understanding, however, was not forgiveness. Unexpectedly, another revelation arrived. Vivian Whitmore requested a private meeting with her daughter. Elara entered reluctantly, prepared for criticism. Instead, she found her mother unusually subdued. Vivian confessed that years earlier she had heard rumors concerning the missing Ashbourne heir. Certain details about Rowan had awakened her suspicions. She never possessed proof, but she believed he might be the lost duke. Elara stared in disbelief. "You knew?" Vivian shook her head. "I suspected." Then she admitted something even more surprising. Part of her resistance to Cedric had grown from those suspicions. She feared Cedric more than Elara realized. For the first time, Elara glimpsed uncertainty beneath her mother's polished confidence. Vivian admitted that ambition had influenced many choices, but so had fear. Cedric's family possessed power that extended beyond wealth. Whispers connected them to dangerous political dealings. Vivian had hoped circumstances might push Elara toward Rowan rather than Cedric, never imagining the plan would actually succeed. The confession did not erase years of conflict, yet it softened something inside Elara. Her mother was flawed, manipulative, and proud, but perhaps not entirely heartless. That realization altered the shape of old wounds. Meanwhile, Rowan's investigation accelerated. Documents surfaced from hidden archives. Witnesses emerged from years of silence. Names repeatedly appeared beside suspicious transactions and secret meetings. One name surfaced more often than any other: Cedric Blackthorn. The evidence suggested his family had benefited enormously after the fall of Ashbourne. Lands changed ownership. Fortunes expanded. Rivals disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Rowan and his allies worked tirelessly to connect the fragments. As the picture grew clearer, the threat became impossible to ignore. Cedric had not merely profited from the conspiracy. He appeared connected to its continuation. One stormy evening, Rowan returned carrying a sealed packet delivered by a trusted messenger. Rainwater darkened his coat. His face was grim. Elara watched him break the seal and read the contents. Whatever he saw drained the color from his features. Without a word, he handed her the documents. They contained reports from loyal informants positioned throughout Ashbourne. Armed men were gathering. Supplies were being purchased in secret. Mercenaries were accepting contracts. At the bottom appeared a final warning. Cedric intended to seize control of Ashbourne by force before Rowan could reclaim his inheritance, and the countdown had already begun. Elara lowered the page slowly. Outside, thunder rolled across the darkened sky like distant drums of war. Fear tightened her chest, yet determination stirred beside it. Rowan was no longer merely her husband or a hidden duke. He was a target, and time was running out already. The road to Ashbourne wound through rolling hills and ancient forests, carrying Rowan and Elara toward a future neither could avoid. Riders loyal to the Ashbourne name surrounded their carriage, their banners snapping sharply in the autumn wind. Villages emerged along the route, and everywhere people gathered to watch. Some cheered openly when Rowan appeared. Others stared with cautious curiosity. For years they had believed their rightful duke dead. Now he had returned from obscurity, bringing uncertainty and hope in equal measure. When Ashbourne Castle finally appeared on the horizon, Elara understood why so many had fought to possess it. Massive stone walls crowned a ridge above a silver river. Towers rose proudly against the sky. The fortress radiated authority, history, and wealth. Yet Rowan's expression held no wonder, only determination. "This was my home," he said quietly. The words carried both affection and grief. Their arrival sparked immediate political turmoil. Loyal supporters welcomed Rowan enthusiastically, but powerful nobles questioned his claim. Years had passed since his disappearance. Some insisted he lacked sufficient proof. Others feared the reforms he might bring. Many simply wished to preserve the influence they had gained during Ashbourne's years without its rightful ruler. Elara quickly discovered that becoming the Duke's wife brought new challenges. The same society that had mocked her for marrying a beggar now criticized her for aspiring to become a duchess. At banquets and gatherings, elegant women offered smiles sharp enough to draw blood. "How fortunate," one noblewoman remarked, "that true nobility can apparently be acquired through accident." Laughter followed. Elara met their gaze calmly. "Character remains far harder to acquire." The laughter stopped. Yet insults continued in subtler forms. Rumors spread through drawing rooms and corridors. Some claimed she had manipulated Rowan. Others suggested she lacked the education or refinement required for her future position. Months earlier such attacks might have wounded her deeply. Now they only strengthened her resolve. Each challenge reminded her how far she had come. One evening, while reviewing documents in Rowan's study, she found him staring at a wall map covered with notes and markers. "You should rest," she said. "So should you." Neither moved. A smile touched her lips. For the first time since his secret had been revealed, the distance between them seemed truly gone. Trust had not returned all at once. It had been rebuilt through honesty, patience, and shared purpose. "I believe you," she said suddenly. Rowan looked up. "About what?" "Everything." Relief softened his features. The moment was brief but meaningful. From that night forward they worked as partners. Together they pursued the truth behind the conspiracy. Evidence emerged piece by piece. Elara helped organize witness statements and financial records. Rowan interviewed former servants, merchants, and officials. Patterns slowly surfaced. Large sums of money had moved through hidden accounts. Public funds intended for infrastructure had vanished. Judges had accepted bribes. Officials had approved forged documents carrying counterfeit royal seals. The corruption stretched farther than anyone imagined. Each discovery led closer to Cedric Blackthorn. Meanwhile, Cedric refused to surrender. His influence remained considerable. Several key witnesses disappeared before they could testify. Anonymous threats arrived regularly. One evening a fire broke out in a storage building containing important records. Only quick action prevented the destruction of crucial evidence. The message was unmistakable. Someone was becoming desperate. Despite the danger, Elara refused to retreat. Late one night she examined a collection of contracts recovered from a former accountant. Among them she discovered discrepancies connecting multiple payments to known conspirators. The signatures matched. The dates aligned. The evidence directly linked Cedric's network to crimes committed years earlier. Excitement surged through her. She hurried to Rowan's office. When she presented the documents, astonishment flashed across his face. "You found this." "We found it," she corrected. Pride shone in his eyes. No noble title had ever made her feel as valued as that single look. The confrontation finally arrived sooner than expected. The king summoned a formal hearing before the royal court. Nobles from across the kingdom gathered to witness the proceedings. The grand chamber overflowed with spectators. Sunlight streamed through towering stained-glass windows, illuminating rows of richly dressed aristocrats. At the center stood Rowan and Cedric. Years of conflict narrowed into a single moment. Cedric appeared calm, confident, dangerous. When accusations were presented, he denied everything. His voice remained smooth and persuasive. He dismissed witnesses as opportunists. He called documents forgeries. He portrayed himself as the victim of a political attack. For a brief moment uncertainty rippled through the chamber. Then Elara stepped forward. She presented the financial records, the forged decrees, the recovered contracts. One by one the pieces fit together. Murmurs spread among the assembled nobles. Cedric's confidence began to crack. Additional witnesses testified. Former servants described secret meetings. Merchants confirmed suspicious transactions. Officials admitted accepting bribes. The weight of evidence became impossible to ignore. Yet the decisive blow came from an unexpected source. Vivian Whitmore entered the chamber. Shock swept through the audience. For years she had cultivated influence within elite circles. Now she risked that reputation entirely. Under oath, she revealed conversations she had overheard between Cedric and associates connected to the conspiracy. She described threats, schemes, and deliberate attempts to manipulate political outcomes. Her testimony connected remaining gaps in the investigation. Cedric's expression darkened. The mask finally shattered. Rage replaced charm. He accused everyone of betrayal. He shouted denials. But no one listened. The truth stood exposed. Royal guards moved forward. Cedric struggled briefly before realizing resistance was futile. As he was led away, silence filled the chamber. Then the king rose. His judgment was swift. The conspirators would face justice. Their properties would be seized. Ashbourne would be restored to its rightful ruler. Relief swept through Elara. Years of deception, danger, and uncertainty had finally ended, or so she believed. Later that evening, after celebrations faded and the castle grew quiet, Rowan received a private summons from the king. The meeting lasted hours. When Rowan finally returned, moonlight illuminated his troubled expression. He carried no triumph, no satisfaction, only conflict. Elara's heart tightened immediately. What happened? Rowan hesitated. The king made me an offer. She sensed at once that the offer was no reward. What kind of offer? He looked toward the dark horizon beyond the castle windows. The kind that could give me more power than any duke in the kingdom. The silence that followed felt heavier than any battle. And the cost? Elara asked softly. Rowan closed his eyes for a moment before answering. When he finally spoke, the words landed like a blade between them. The cost, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, may be you. The revelation lingered between them long after Rowan spoke. Moonlight stretched across the floor of Ashbourne Castle, turning the silence cold and silver. Elara stood beside the window, searching his face for some sign that the king's proposal could be dismissed. Instead she found only honesty. The king wants stability, Rowan said. He believes a marriage alliance between powerful houses will secure the kingdom. The meaning was clear. A politically advantageous bride. Greater influence. A stronger future for the realm. None of those things included Elara. In the days that followed, pressure came from every direction. Influential nobles visited Ashbourne and praised Rowan's leadership. Then they offered the same advice. A ruler must think beyond personal desires. The kingdom requires sacrifice. History remembers those who place duty first. Every conversation carried the same message. Elara was expendable. Rowan listened politely but rarely answered. Rumors spread through court circles. Some claimed he had already accepted the king's conditions. Others insisted he was delaying the announcement. Elara heard every whisper. Yet her greatest fear was not humiliation. It was becoming an obstacle to Rowan's future. One evening she walked alone through the castle gardens. Autumn leaves drifted across the pathways while fountains murmured softly in the darkness. Rowan found her there. You've been avoiding me, he said. I've been thinking. I know. She drew a slow breath. If accepting the offer helps the kingdom, perhaps you should accept it. Pain flashed across his face. That is not what I want. What if wanting is irrelevant? It isn't. She remembered the man beside the chapel, the beggar who had listened when no one else would. She remembered simple meals, hard days, and quiet kindness. None of those memories contained titles. They contained Rowan. That girl who proposed marriage to a stranger, she said softly, never imagined any of this. I'm grateful she did. The royal assembly was scheduled for the following week. There Rowan would announce his decision before the king and the entire court. As the day approached, tension spread through Ashbourne. Courtiers speculated endlessly. Newspapers published predictions. Rowan appeared calm, but Elara saw the exhaustion beneath the surface. At last the day arrived. The royal assembly filled the capital's grand hall with splendor. Banners hung from towering columns. Nobles occupied rows of carved seats while diplomats watched from elevated galleries. The king sat upon a magnificent throne at the chamber's center. Every eye followed Rowan as he stepped forward. Duke Rowan Ashbourne, the king said, have you considered the proposal presented to you? I have. The hall grew silent. When I lost my family, Rowan began, I lost more than a title. I lost trust, certainty, and the life I believed belonged to me. His voice carried through the chamber. For years I lived among people who possessed little. They taught me compassion, resilience, and dignity. They showed me that worth cannot be measured by wealth. The audience listened carefully. During those years, one person chose me when I appeared to have nothing at all. Elara felt her heart pounding. Rowan turned toward her. She did not know I was a duke. She did not know I had lands or inheritance. She saw only the man standing before her. Emotion deepened his voice. She endured hardship beside me. She helped expose treason. She risked her safety to uncover the truth. She stood with me when doing so offered no reward. The hall remained silent. Then Rowan faced the king. With respect, your majesty, I cannot accept any arrangement requiring me to abandon my wife. Murmurs erupted throughout the chamber. You would refuse greater power? The king asked. Yes. For love. Rowan shook his head. For principle. A ruler who betrays loyalty at home will eventually betray it elsewhere. If I discard the woman who stood beside me when I possessed nothing, then I become unworthy of everything I possess now. The king studied him for several moments. Then he smiled. So that is your final answer? It is. Good. Confusion swept through the audience. The king rose. The offer was never a test of political judgment. It was a test of character. Even Rowan looked surprised. Power is easily granted, the king continued. Integrity is far rarer. Relief flooded Elara. The assembly erupted into applause. The crown formally acknowledged Elara's role in exposing the conspiracy. Nobles who once dismissed her now applauded her courage. Before the entire kingdom, she was recognized as Duchess of Ashbourne. Weeks later, peace settled over the duchy. Vivian visited Ashbourne Castle and met her daughter in a sunlit courtyard. I wanted to protect you, Vivian admitted. I know. I made mistakes. So did I. The years of resentment finally loosened their grip. Mother and daughter embraced. It was not perfect, but it was real. Under Rowan's leadership, Ashbourne flourished. New laws protected laborers, improved village conditions, and expanded assistance for struggling families. Rowan never forgot the years he spent among the poor. Elara worked beside him, supporting charitable projects throughout the duchy. Together they became beloved by the people. Months later, a grand celebration illuminated Ashbourne Castle. Music echoed through the courtyards while fireworks painted the night sky. Citizens filled the grounds below, celebrating peace and renewal. Standing upon a balcony above the festivities, Elara looked at the man she had once believed was a penniless beggar. Rowan smiled. You fell in love with me when I had nothing. She squeezed his hand. No, she replied. I fell in love with the only thing that never changed, your heart. Below them, the celebration continued, but for a moment the world seemed to narrow to their joined hands and the future waiting beyond the castle lights. Titles had changed. Fortunes had changed. Circumstances had changed. Yet the truth remained exactly as it had beside the abandoned chapel. Love had found them before power ever did, and that was why it would endure forever. Their story would be remembered for generations as proof that loyalty outlasts ambition and pride.